Okay. Welcome to the Sweet Spot, an Updog podcast. I'm Andrea Morissette,
And I am Jack Faley.
and we are very excited today to have Sara Brueske on our podcast. Woo woo!
Woohoo!
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited to have Sara today. And actually, this is a unique topic for us because we wanted to talk today about young dogs playing. This is actually based off of a conversation that Jack and I had kind of randomly last week about how repetitive games with young dogs, some of them can create big problems. And so we thought, well, let's do a topic on that. And then we thought, well, who would we want as our guest? And the first name out of our mouth was you, Sara. You're amazing with puppies. And so we wanted to pick your brain and help inform the Updog community about how they can best set up their puppies to be successful, safe, healthy adult sport dogs. So that's what you're here for. And before we get started in that, I wanted to just hear a little bit about you. So about you, your dogs, where you live, your club, your facility, any of that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. So I live up in Minnesota now, but I was Jerry's coworker for many, many years down at Purina Farms, where we performed with our dogs for the public every single day. And so that's where a lot of my Frisbee knowledge comes from, is from that. And I was at the very first beta testing up here in Minnesota of dog in general. So 10 years ago, I was there with my dogs, and I absolutely fell in love with the organization and the games, especially the fact that it helps get more people involved in the sport, which is a driving factor for me, definitely one of my motivations. But right now I have 10 dogs. I have 7 of those dogs are in their double digits, so they're all retired. They are all Frisbee dogs. I absolutely adore it. Some of them were competitive in Frisbee, but some of them just performed in shows. And then I currently have 3 dogs that are in training. And so I have 2 Australian Coolies, Vibrant and Cake. And then I have my little 5-pound Papillon Pop Rock, who loves to play Frisbee. And she's actually pretty darn competitive, even against the big dogs on some of those games.
Is your daughter ever going to let you steal her to be your Frisbee dog, or is she going to be one of our youth competitors with Pop Rock?
We did our very first pairs game. We did 4-way play, me,
All
Maven, and Pop
right.
Rock. Yeah, Maven got her little
Much fun.
rollers out there and everything.
Oh
Was
my
way
God.
more intrigued in the leash though, so I definitely need to strategize a little bit different in the future. But they play Frisbee almost every night. So
That's
And
awesome.
just one thing to add, Sarah did not bring this up, but that's okay. It's I think, tell me if I'm right, Sarah, but I believe that you were our back-to-back freestyle champion, right?
yeah,
First
but we're
year
2
was it?
different dogs. So the very first year at UpDiff was Zinga. She was freestyle, and I think Zip Tie was overall. And then the second year at UpDiff, Zip Tie was freestyle, and we did not grab the overall at that competition. But yeah, thanks for
And
mentioning that.
Oh, I forgot
that's
about that.
and that
Mhm.
second one, Dre, if you remember, that second one sort of gave us some inspiration towards the performance round.
Yeah, the flash mob.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and wasn't that also the year that Zip Tie like blasted the record for agility? I was
yeah,
judging, and it
yeah.
was
It was
scary to
it,
try and keep up. It was
it was that
so
chili dog though, and I
yeah,
remember
that was
everybody's like,
pretty
"No, we
dog.
need to see video of this," and we had video,
Yeah, it was
and
just so bad.
that was the foundation of the just the circular method, the drop and goes, and not supporting the jumps. Because before that, a lot of people were running it like an agility course. And so for zip tie, I just back chained it and made it so that he did the obstacles independently. So literally, I just had to be at the first
You
jump,
just stood
grab
there
the
with
frisbee,
stick
and
and
send him.
through, and he
Yep.
just
Then I
Yeah.
just stood there. It was great. And so I still use that method with my dogs today, and I know a lot of people do.
Yeah,
that's really
all the highest scores, that's what you're doing, because you're not gonna keep up with those super high scores if you've got to run through there as well. So,
No.
anyways, so Sarah, when we were talking about this, one of the things that popped into my head, of course, is you always at least I do. I'll only speak for me. But each time that I get like a new dog, there's something that I did with my previous dog that I'm like, all right, well, I don't want to do that again, or I want to do that differently. And I want to make sure that I set up a good foundation for my new dog, or my new dog to disc. It may not be a young dog, but maybe I'm just wanting to get into disc. What are some of those essential foundational skills that you would feel like you definitely need to work on this with your dog if you want to play disc with your dog?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my big things is using a multiple marker system. And so that means instead of just saying yes and rewarding your dog, however, so yes for a throw, yes for tugging, yes for a treat from my hand, yes for a treat toss, you actually label those as different things. And so that way your dog knows what reward they're getting and how it's delivered. And so I've found with my young dogs and my clients' dogs, so I do a lot of puppy camps with sport dogs where people will give me their puppies for a few weeks and I'll add in some foundations. I found that teaching that marker system right away as the first thing tends to help a lot with communication. It helps with engagement, and it helps my dog learn the actual foundation of the things I want to teach them. And so as it relates to Frisbee, my toy markers, I usually just have 2 different toy markers for my Frisbee dogs, sometimes 3. And one is to come in and bite the toy I have, and one of them is I'm going to throw the toy. So we both know that, or we all know that those things are so important for a Frisbee dog. We need them to be confident biting that disc and coming in for that tug so we can work on that close stuff and help build that engagement and that return to us. And then that throw obviously is super important. And so I can go ahead and label that I'm going to throw it now, or I want you to come in and bite it. And clarifying that for young dogs not only helps them be clear on what I want, so they're not accidentally coming in and biting the disc when I don't want them to, and now I have to get on them for, dirty biting and all that stuff, but it also helps teach them that words are important. And so they need to listen to the words coming out of my mouth versus just looking at what my body's doing. And so we know with freestyle, that's really important that we can verbally cue the flips, the vaults, the stalls, all of that as our dog's coming in. And so I'm teaching that foundation right off the bat. So just by teaching them the difference between strike, which is my come in and bite the toy, or chase, which is I'm going to throw the toy, right away, teach those 2 things. And it's super easy, especially if you're playing with your dog already. You just say the word before you do the action. I'm teaching my dog so much information. And the bonus with our puppies, they don't have to have actual behaviors at that point. So I'm not asking for a sit or a down and having a potential for them to fail. So that is like my biggest foundation when it comes to the actual disc game, the first step with any dog I have. The other one is just engagement in new environments in general. So a lot of times people struggle, especially with dogs as they come into adolescence, that the environment's just a lot more exciting. The people on the sidelines are exciting. The dogs on the sideline are exciting. The goose poop on the field's exciting. Somebody drops some kibble down, oh, that's exciting, all of those different things. And so I create some really fun pattern games that might vary from dog to dog, but they're predictable, they're consistent games that I can go out to any place. I can go to Tractor Supply and play it. I can go to the local park and play it. I can play it near another dog that tell my dog when to start working, to stay engaged with me playing this fun game, and then all done, they're done working now so they can check out that environment if they need to. And so those are my very first 2 things, teaching the difference between when to tug and when to chase, as well as when to work and when to stop working.
I
That's
have a
very
favorite.
cool.
Yeah.
I like that second one especially. I've not done that. That's something that I gotta think about. That's good. I
And
like it.
First
a
one was
lot
my
of
favorite.
a lot of people do the second one without thinking, like Ron Watson's be a dog, go do dog
Right.
stuff.
Go do
That
dog
is what
stuff.
that is. It's just putting it in a more predictable patterned routine that you can kind of take, on the road.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I like the connection there. We obviously go do dog stuff's something that I, do release the dog after working, but that additional component of teaching them when to work, I think is a neat. That's an idea, a neat concept that I didn't make the connection for. So that's great.
Yeah,
Dre,
two
what
cool
were you
things.
saying? You like number one?
The first part, I think, something that I struggle with a lot with my dogs because I have Aussie types, is something that she said in that first part is them knowing to listen. Like they will literally they'll go through
Right.
years of training and not listen to a damn thing you're saying, and you don't realize it until you actually stop moving your body and say the word, and they look at you like you're like speaking a different language. So I had that very humbling experience a couple years ago, that even though I was giving many multiple cues and I was using them, my Aussie type dogs just weren't listening.
And we're
So
pretty,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah,
we're pretty spoiled in Frisbee because I mean, we get so many cues, right? We can back chain a sequence for for any of the strategy games, right? So I can train a 4-way play sequence, I can train a funky sequence, I can train all of those sequences. So we have that cue. Then we have our body cue. So where's my body pointing? Am I lifting a leg for a leg vault? Where is my hand? Then we have the frisbee placement. So where is that frisbee in relation to my body to get the trick that I want? And we have our verbal cues. So we really have so many cues to play with. But if verbal cues are going to be important in your future training, then it's definitely something you want to train right away with your
Right
puppies
away.
and start teaching them to think about verbal words as an actual cue.
Mhm. Yeah, that was a really big one. And then for the second thing, can you give us an example of like a simple because like so the pattern game that you were speaking of, the second thing, could it be like, this spot, this spot, this spot, this spot, end of game? Like, give me an example of like one of the simple patterns that you might use for the predictable game to keep dogs engaged in different distracting environments.
Yeah, absolutely. I have so many of them. My go-to ones. So I normally do food reinforcement for this just because it's easier to take on the road into new places. If I, have a dog that I'm looking for frisbee, I'll develop some toy pattern games, but generally they're pretty easy, pretty predictable, what you'd normally do for toy play stuff. But for food, the treat toss game is one of my favorites because I can toss a treat near different distractors and vary where that is to help my dog get used to that. And then the other cool thing is it teaches them that if they do disconnect, that it's their job to reconnect with me. And so by tossing that treat, that's the disconnection part. And then they eat the treat and then they reconnect with me and they get a reward from me. I toss another treat the other way. They come back to me, they get another reward, so on and so forth. And so what I like about that game is it gives me a few different observational points. So what that means are I can check, oh, normally they eat the treat and then his head snaps right back to look at me. But right now he's sniffing after he eats that treat. And that's telling me he's not quite ready for me to move on to actual work that I care about. There's no right way or wrong way to play these games, but knowing how your dog normally plays them is really the power behind it, because then you can use those observational points and go, oh, this is really distracting for my dog. Maybe I shouldn't take off the leash to go play frisbee right now.
Yeah. And for some of our newer players that might not know or understand how to read dog behavior, because I was like, oh, I could see that stuff, right? What are some of the, like, if you had to name 3 to 5 things that your dog might do as a displacement behavior to let them know they're not ready for work, what might some of those signs be as a stressor or distraction for a dog that might require that the dog won't like engage the way they want?
It really depends on your type of dog. So you have dogs that just simply stop taking the food altogether, or you toss the treat and then they just continue sniffing rather than eating that food. You have dogs that tend to spin up when they're stressed out or distracted, and then they get really chompy, chewy, and bite your fingers when they're trying to give them food when they're normally a little bit more or a little bit more calm with that. And so when I do this sort of training with my dogs, and especially my puppies, I got to make sure you play those pattern games in a normal, distraction-free environment often. That way you always have a good read on what your dog's normal is, and then you can compare it to a distracted version and pick up on those little subtle cues. And it might just be as simple as when you say, get it is my treat toss marker cue, meaning I'm going to throw that treat. When I say get it, my dog doesn't respond and they come try to get the food from my hand. Like, that's a little subtle difference when normally my dog would, if I say get it, they start going pitter patter and like looking for me to throw that treat because they're so excited that I'm going to be throwing it. And so really with any of these games, and you can play a ton of different games, you can just simply lure your dog around in circles as a pattern game. And there's tons of information that can come on there. A dog that might be a little bit more stressed out, instead of staying on your hand with that lure, maybe they're coming off of that. Maybe they're not putting as much effort in to follow that lure around. Or if it's a dog that spins up like a Malinois or a Border Collie that's really food driven, they're chomping and chewing on your fingers rather than just licking at your fingers.
Right.
So all the little different games that you play, and they can be just your warm-up stuff, you'll start to notice the more often you do them, what your dog's stressor cues really are.
Super cool.
So usually, Sarah, it's Dre that takes the conversation this way. But Dre, look at me. I'm gonna take it to freestyle.
Yeah,
So um
I'm so proud of you, Jack.
don't let me put words in your mouth, Sarah, but I think what I heard you say, like if you go back to the first thing that you talked about, strike and chase, right?
Mhm.
And saying that word before the action. Is that what you had said?
Yep.
And
Yep.
I know that thinking about freestyle, I know for me anyway, when I'm out there and I'm talking to my dog and I am using some cues, things go a lot better. What happens is a lot of times I get out there and I forget because so much is going on, and I walk off the field sometimes and maybe I didn't have the best round. And the first thing Kat says to me is, "Did you talk to your dog?"
Mhm.
And so I know that these audio cues are super important, but could you talk a little bit more about, like, on the freestyle field as like everything's happening, the importance of like when do I give that cue? Because I do see a lot of people say things, but a lot of times it's like as it's happening, like
Late, yeah.
vault or something, and the throw's already in the air, and so like what is the importance of the timing of that cue?
Yeah, for me, my verbal cues really are the heads up to my dog, hey, this move is going to happen. Then my body position and then my disc placement helps follow up the cue. And so for it to be that heads up that we need, like, hey, we're going to do a vault, get that collection stride in now, I like to give my cues 2 strides ahead. So anybody that does agility, you always try to cue at least 2 strides ahead, right? So my dog has time to process the cue, adjust their stride, and then do the behavior. So same thing with freestyle. I want to make sure I'm saying those words well before the behavior so that my dog can process that cue, get in position, and change whatever they need to do to be able to follow through with that behavior. But like I said, we have so many different cues in freestyle that we can be a little bit sloppy. And human nature really is to say the word as we're doing the action. So this is a big thing. A lot of people will say yes as their hand is delivering the food, right? And so that's the yes is just not doing anything there. That's fine. You can say it, but it's not really having the power of a marker if we say it as we're delivering the food. My dog doesn't care about the words coming out of my mouth at that point. My dog cares about them getting the food. So same thing with if I'm cueing a leg vault, right? So if I say vault or my cues fly, if I say fly as my leg is coming up and the frisbee is getting released from my hand, my dog's not listening to that word. So the whole point of the verbal cue is just lost at that point, and I'm just basically saying it for my own benefit. And so for it to have the power of telling my dog this move is coming up, be prepared for this move, I need to say it where my dog can process it, and that's going to be well before the action actually happens.
I'm
Definitely
just
good things to think about. I know a lot of times when I'm listening, and Dre and I listen to quite a few videos, right, Dre?
Mhm.
I know that that could be a helpful tip for a lot of our freestyle teams.
Actually, yeah, it makes a huge difference for me. And I definitely was one of those that tended to say it as I did the behavior. And then I started doing sports that where you can't have any body cues. So like Schutzen and Mondio and stuff like that. And so then that was when that power of the verbal really came out to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like in disc, there is no rule that says we can't use any physical assistance. There's like no rules about how much
But that's why like it's so good because then you
freestyle.
can use all the cues you want and you should
Yeah.
use all the cues you want, but use them effectively.
But it's interesting how when we can use our physical cues, how the verbal is like the thing that always gets flushed down the toilet, like saying the verbal at the right time, you know?
Yeah,
It's
and I
It's
mean, think about it from our dog's perspective too. They spend all day watching our bodies or listening to us talk, and they don't care about what we're saying.
right.
And so the verbal cue is definitely the weakest of the cues. So if it's paired with motion from your body, your dog's not listening to the word, they're watching your body.
Yep.
and that goes back to, like you said, helping your dog to understand that words mean something and that they do need to listen and listen for the differences in the words that you're saying. So that's really uh, a good helpful foundational component for us is to build that understanding with our dog, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, you can get super complex with it. So, like my dog creature had 16 different marker cues, and he was very good about listening to verbal cues without any body help. We needed it for the sport that we were doing. But my normal sport dogs, I think I counted 6 or 7, and that's pretty normal. Things like good means I'm going to deliver the food to you, so stay there, versus yes means come forward, take it from my hand, and then get it is I'm going to toss the treat. So there's 3 cues right there. So even teaching the difference with food versus just in that toy game that I was talking about earlier is a really good way of introducing that concept to your puppies.
Speaking about concepts for puppies, there's another one that when I think about new dogs coming into the sport and if they were gonna like go to somebody, there's a couple people that come to mind and you're one of them. And one of the things that I see that you do a lot of, because you work with a lot of breeds, like you're not only getting border collies and Malinois, you're getting poodles and like dogs that don't have obvious drive. So
Mhm.
how do you, what are some things that we could tell our members that maybe they've just gotten a dog, maybe they're brand new to dog sports and they don't even know what a dog sport dog is. And they have some dog that doesn't have much drive. When you get one of your puppy campers and you're doing drive building things, what are some skills that they can work on that are going to help them build drive for the game and then like build drive for like retrieve and drop, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, one of the biggest things, I use a lot of food in my training for like retrieves and fetch and tug and all of that. All my outs are trained with food, everything's trained with food. So just the idea of swapping between toys and food so that you can reinforce the things that you want to. So maybe your dog is like, yeah, I like to play at home, but I don't like to play in new environments. If you were able to teach that as a normal behavior, so something like a sit or a down that you would reinforce with food, teaching them to pick up an object. So you get the toy, so excited about that toy, so excited about that toy, and then you can reward that interaction with food is a really good way to have an easy way to reward the toy play and all of that stuff outside. Not only that, but it allows you to switch back and forth between the reinforcers where a lot of dogs will struggle with that. But if you're brand new to sports in general, your best bet is to get enrolled in a class. It does not matter the class. It could just be a puppy kindergarten. It could be a tricks class. It could be just going out and hanging out with your local disc club when they have play groups. But getting out and about and watching other people train their dogs, getting your dogs used to working around other dogs, and just getting involved somehow in the training community is the best bet and the best advice I can give anybody.
That was awesome. Cool. Thanks.
All right, Sarah. So let's switch a little bit. We talked about a number of things that would be great to do. Is there anything that we shouldn't do? Like if you have maybe somebody come in with the dog and they want to be building that disc dog foundation, but they've already kind of started with some things. Are there any things that you're like, oh my gosh, no? I mean, obviously, maybe you don't say it out loud to them, but you're thinking it and saying, no, don't. I wish you hadn't done that. Is there any of those? Are there any of those things?
Yeah, so the obvious answers are limit jumping, limit repetitions with young dogs. Growth plates are still growing. Not only that, but we don't want to burn out our puppies before they ever even hit the field. The other thing is going into competitions with the intention of being competitive while your dog is still young. So, the cool thing about disc is that we can safely play at competitions with our puppies, right? We can do a long line, we can do rollers, we can do just engagement. But the power behind that is going in to work engagement and work on training things in that environment, not going out there to be competitive. And so one of the biggest things that is really difficult to fix, in my opinion, is developing bad habits with a young dog by pushing them to be competitive too early. And so I'm talking long throws for like a dog under, maybe 2 years, depending on the dog, and expecting them to run 60 plus yards and bring that disc all the way back over and over and over again in that competition setting. Because a lot of the dogs are gonna go, this is a lot of freaking work. So, or they're gonna go, I love this, but I hate it when the timer starts counting down and now you can't catch me. And so all of those habits where the dog's like, yeah, maybe my return's going to slow down because I know you're just going to throw another bomb and it's going to be a lot of work for me. So I need to catch my breath somehow. So I'm going to start to slow down my return, or just the keep away games or the not bringing the disc back. All of those could be avoided and should be prevented as much as possible in the competition setting if you can. So go out there, play with your puppies, but do it in a sense of, I want to maintain and make sure my dog can do these behaviors and make it fun and engaging. And maybe you only play for 30 seconds. That's fine. Like, you don't have to play a full round with your dog, and you shouldn't be playing competitively with your puppies. Like, it just should not happen. And so that's one of my biggest things, because if you create a bad habit in that setting, it's really difficult to get rid of that bad habit in that setting. So if I create a bad habit in my backyard, then it's kind of generally lost in my backyard. That's fine. I can create it in my backyard. I don't care in my backyard. But in a competition setting, no, I want to protect those behaviors as much as I can. And so I very rarely will push a puppy past their training point on a competition field.
That brings up an interesting point for me about the puppies in training and really pushing them. I think that's just looking for what the puppy is communicating, or any dog, right? Like, because it's not always going to be puppies. But I think part that we miss that we miss, especially when we get into an arousal situation, just like dogs. When we get to an environment where there's a competition, our arousal goes up along with the dogs, and we forget the real reason that we're there. And then which we'd say the real reason that we're there is to set our puppy up for success, right? Because nobody's going to go into it expecting a 6-month-old puppy to like have a fantastic round. But when we get out there and we get an arousal, just like our dogs, sometimes we forget. But one of the things I think that we can hold on to from what you just said, Sarah, was like looking for the information the dog is giving us while we're in those arousal situations. Because what we're going to do is tend to go into our own brains because we're in arousal. Though. And then we miss all that information that, like you had talked earlier about these foundational trainings that you're doing with dogs, and you're looking for what behaviors they're giving you when you toss the cookie and their focus and how they behave and stuff. Doing it on the field is a level up from that. It's the same exact game, right? You're just looking to see what they're displacing and what they're not, what their stress responses are. So if we're stuck in our own arousal, excited about playing the game with our puppy, and we're not paying attention to what the puppy is responding to each of our training things, we're really missing the gold of all that foundation behavior. Like once you get to the environment, if you're not paying attention to what the puppy's telling you for stress because you're more concerned about playing, I think that was like a little gem inside of there that I wanted to
Yeah,
pull.
that's huge. And I tend to forget about the human side because I'm
Mhm.
just like, pay attention to your dog. Your dog is more important. Da, 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 da. And so it's really good to remember that, yeah, we're excited. We're out there playing with our dogs. And if we're having a great round with our puppy, it's really hard to stop before those behaviors start happening. Like it's really, really hard because like, wow, this is so competitive. Wow, da, 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 da. But now my return is getting sloppy. Oh, I didn't quite hold criteria here because they
Right.
didn't bring it to my hand. All of that stuff, it is so much more important to pay attention to that and watch for those little details, like you said, because you have, 10 years to play with your dog on the field. You have way more than this first year. Like, let your puppy be a puppy in those moments.
Yeah. That was a
Yeah,
good
that
gem.
goes back. It reminds me of when we talked to Tracy Custer, Dre, and Tracy was saying, it's her dog. She feels like she hits her stride with her dogs in terms of disc games and freestyle and things like that at like age 5.
Mhm.
And so I think many times I'll only again speak for myself. I'm guilty of this. I go out there, you get a little success with your young pup and you're like so proud of your puppy and you're like, wow, they caught like a 7-yard roller or whatever. I wonder if they could do 10, like it just gets in my head. And again, I think that's great advice to just make sure that we're not letting our own competitive nature, our own excitement for the success that we see, perhaps build bad habits.
Yeah, yeah, the joy of it's so hard, but you always know there's another session the next day. So you can
Right.
see, 10 rollers, but over maybe 2 or 3 days versus all in one session. And I was just going to mention too, some downs just take longer. And I know that's really hard when you're watching online on social media, everybody's puppies, and maybe it's your puppy's sibling that's just rocking it. But know that some dogs take longer. Vibrant, I didn't even build a routine with her. She turned 4 in October and we did our first competition this fall because she just was not mentally ready to hit the field. And if I would have, like, yeah, we could have fumbled our way through it, and we could have done it, but I am so happy I waited to create a full routine with her. She had the tricks, and they were fine, but her mental status was just too far gone, and her arousal was way too difficult to manage, that it would have been sloppy, it would have been dangerous. I would have been upset and frustrated, because I know the talent she has, but she just wasn't in the correct, she hadn't grown up and matured enough yet until this year to really start piecing things together. Versus Cake. Cake has been a piece of cake, hence her name.
Yeah, she's
We are
awesome.
hitting some arousal things that I wasn't expecting now that she's 2, but like she was easy. I was able to start sequencing things with her a lot earlier than I was with Vibrant. And that's just a different dog, same breed, same upbringing, same everything, but one of them is just a little bit easier than the other.
Yep. Freebird, I mean, Freebird didn't really start playing consistency. She was like 6.
Mhm.
So, and I mean, around 4, I was like, all right, you're just going to be you're going to pop in the oven. Your turkey baster's going to pop at some point down the line, but it's not right now. So I tried competing with her until she was about 4. And then I was just like, all right, because it was impacting my relationship, right? Trying to get her to be something that she wasn't, and be ready before she was, and operate at a certain level of mental development that she didn't have yet. And now as a 6-year-old dog, she's got it, and
Right.
she's asking for play. It's interesting. It's very frustrating to wait that long, especially if you only have one sport dog, or if you have an older sport dog that's like retired and this is your only young dog. Like, it's really hard to have the right patience that our dogs need sometimes when we want to play.
It is, but then we can think about like cross training. So Vibrant didn't just sit, she was hiking, we were working on recall, she was doing bike joring, she was doing nose work, she was doing agility, she was training for tricks. So we were still doing things. We just held off on this one aspect because she wasn't ready for it. So all of that cross-training stuff is teaching body awareness, is teaching arousal management, it's teaching the verbal cues and everything we need for freestyle, just in different ways. And so then when you are ready to hit that field, you are approaching it with a much stronger, solid relationship with the dog that's more mentally mature, yes, because they've aged out, but also more physically mature as well.
Hey, Jack, I have another question, but I have lots of questions, and so I wanted to give you a chance to ask a
Okay.
question.
All right. I have a question because this is probably, I don't know. I don't know if it's number one, but this is definitely something that when folks come out to our local club, like if they're a new person, they come out to the local club, and maybe the dog's not new. The dog could be 3-4 years old or whatever, and they come out to Updog, and of course in Updog we have many games. I think every game except maybe Far Out and for agility where they can use multiple discs. And they've been playing maybe in their backyard, just kind of toss and fetching it back and forth with the same disc. And then they come out and maybe the game's four-way play or spaced out or something like that, and their dog won't play with more than one disc. So I guess my questions here are two questions. Like, what's a good foundation like for a puppy so that they can get used to multiple discs? And if you had somebody like that where my dog's been playing with just they think the game is just one disc, how do I get them to realize it could be more than that?
Yeah, my favorite game to do with puppies is so when I do all of their disc stuff, so that chase versus strike I was talking about earlier, I always use two frisbees because I want the engagement to be about me, not about the toy itself. So the game is about engaging with me. Yes, I'm going to throw it, you're going to get it, but then you're going to come right back to me to tug on that second disc. We're going to tug, tug, tug. I'm going to let you win because, again, it's not about the disc. I don't want to fight about getting the disc back. I don't want to create conflict there. I want my dog dropping it and immediately coming back to me for the next throw or the next tug. So using those multiple discs from the beginning helps create a game that is more about you and your dog playing together versus about the singular item. And what ends up happening is that singular item doesn't become as important and as valuable because there's always another, there's always another, there's always another. And the way they get that is through you. And so it's not about that blue frisbee. It's about engaging with my mom. And so it's a lot easier to teach it from the get-go that we use two. I do work my retrieve to hand, but I use food to teach that as a behavior because I want to very particular. I want you putting that frisbee in my hand. I don't want to have to reach for it. I'm a lazy trainer. I don't want you dropping it 10 feet from me. So I train that as a separate behavior without a frisbee first. So I use like a toy or a wooden dowel is my favorite to teach a deliver to hand as a behavior. And then I add that into the frisbee game, but not until my dog is solidly coming back for that next disc, for the next one. And then for the dog that already has that habit, there's a couple ways you can go about it. If they're a very food motivated dog and they like to switch between the toys and the food, using food to reinforce biting the one that they don't want to bite, great. That's the way I would try to go about it, just because it helps bring down arousal and helps reduce some of those overexcited feelings. But the easiest way is to reinforce interaction with the one they don't want with the one they do want. So in order to get your blue special frisbee, you have to bite the yellow one, or you have to at least sniff the yellow one, or you have to touch the yellow one with your nose. Wherever your dog is starting at, wherever you meet your dog at, they have to do that to get the blue one. And then we go back and forth, building up that interaction more and more. Now I want you striking and tugging on the yellow one to get the blue one. Now I want you grabbing a roller with the yellow one to get the blue one. So they don't just get the blue one for free. We know they're going to play with the blue one. Let's use that. It's the power of the blue frisbee. So we can use that to reward the behavior one. The blue wubba zip tie. There's a reason why blue always comes out of my mouth for this example. But, they don't need any more value added to blue frisbee. So it has a lot of power. Use that power to reinforce the behaviors that you want.
I like that. That's a really cool way to think about it, is that disc that they love is their essential reward, right?
Yep. Yep.
The blue wubba
The
is the best. There was this inside joke from Purina. Zip tie would literally only dock dive for the blue wubba. Like,
so his reward. So we did build up a frisbee catch off the dock,
yeah.
but it was for a blue wubba throw off the dock. So again, using the toy you wanted, the blue wubba, to reinforce interaction with the white frisbee he didn't want. And so it started with him just jumping for it, and he would like hit it with a closed mouth. He's like, I don't want this, and reinforcing that with the blue wubba, showing him that he did get access to the thing he wanted, but you got to do it, got to at least put a little effort in, and then building that up to a consistent catch. And then I was able to start reinforcing, instead of with the blue wubba, with just another frisbee throw, and taking that out of the equation. But then when we started doing fetch it, so the suspended toy above the water, he didn't want to do that for a bumper. But if I dangled the blue wubba up there, he would do it just fine. So we did that for a while. Then we swapped it out for a bumper for the same blue wubba throw off the dock, and then eventually faded that out too. So he was jumping for just the bumper.
So the moral of the story is the blue wubba is
The blue
really
wubba.
magical.
Not the red wubba, not the purple wubba, the blue wubba.
Yeah. It just, I mean, I think Dre knows, I think you know too, Sarah, that I've taught elementary students in the classroom for 30 years. And that's something that you learn very quickly too, is that, positive reinforcement is different for different students. Whatever, some students value time with you. Some students value, oh, I get to go to the computer, I get to read my book. And so you got to find that blue wubba or whatever it is that drives your dog or drives your kid or your student or whatever. But it's different for different dogs. And being able to leverage that, I think that's an excellent idea. Thank you for answering that question for us.
Yeah, Maven's right now is, do you want to play with Pop Rock? Her the Papillon, right? So it's, you got to put on your jammies, then we can go play with Pop Rock.
Yeah, a dog training works for everybody, for humans, children, spouses.
Yeah. I can say that there were a few times that I said yes in the classroom, like I was clicking a dog.
Yeah, that happens.
So Sarah, since this is an Up Dog podcast, so we are covering how to get your dog started in disc in general, but if we bring it back to Up Dog a little bit, we have new people come all the time, right? New dog sport people and new people cross over from agility and other sports where maybe they don't know anything about disc. What games with people with young dogs, let's focus on just young dogs that are not physically developed yet. What games would you say would be safe, good games to start them with that will create positive patterns that would help them in their development for disc? And then the next question is going to be, what games would you either avoid entirely or avoid doing too much, like we were saying, toss and fetch, because they would create negative patterns. So if you could just kind of speak into if you were a new player with a new dog getting into dog sports and you don't really know what you're doing and you show up at an Up Dog event, what games are you going to want to move to and which ones are you going to want to kind of stay away from until your dog's a little bit more mature?
Yeah, my go-to with puppies. So even if I'll routinely take a client's dog that I'm working with to a local Up Dog, just for the exposure. Even if they're not going to be playing Frisbee, if they have a Frisbee game with me, I'm taking that on the road because it's just such good socialization. Four-way play and throw and go are my go-to puppy games because you can throw short throws and you can move with your dog. So four-way play is my favorite because it makes you move around the field with your dog. And a lot of time that movement, you running, helps encourage them to stay engaged with us. When we play a game like throw and go, we're kind of stuck in one spot a little bit more. So you have to remember to put that a little bit more effort in. I might follow my dog after the roller and then run away from them to help encourage that speedy return. But both of them, I think, are really good. You can use multiple discs for both. So I can use my two Frisbees, and they're always my go-to. So my first two games I ever play with any dogs are four-way play and throw and go. And I also think the rules are pretty easy for somebody to learn, right? So if they're in the backyard playing with their dog, toss and fetch, I mean, that's throw and go right there. And so they get the idea pretty quickly. And the four-way play game, I mean, it's a little bit more complex, but it's not hard, right? Get a catch here, get a catch here, get a catch here, so on and so forth. So I think those are my two games that I always suggest people go play.
So, I mean, and aside from obviously freestyle, we don't want to throw a puppy into a freestyle round. But maybe like people could be thinking maybe the crossover games, if I took off the bars and just sent the dog through the stanchions, like what do you think about games that you would avoid playing with dogs that are like maybe under 15 months of age, that it's just worth it to wait until they're a little bit more mature before you start kind of taking on the patterns of those games?
So I will say if it's a crossover dog, so their foundation is more agility, having that tunnel there to help them give context or the jumps there to help give them context is a really good way to introduce it. Obviously, put the bars on the ground for a puppy. But if they already know agility and that's their main sport, I think that fragility is a really good game for them because you can just say, hey, look, it's a tunnel. You know tunnel. It's great, especially if they have some environmental sensitivities. But for a new sport team, the games where you have to throw in specific spots,
Mhm.
even if you're like, I'm setting my dog up for success, it doesn't matter. Games like Spaced Out, you just get it in your head that you have to get this catch in this one square. And even though you don't have to, you can throw to the other squares. Like you don't need to get a spaced out. People just get so stuck on that it can be detrimental to a puppy because they're having failure after failure after failure. And they also don't think you can't move in that game, right? So I can't adjust and move and engage with my dog other than to pick up frisbees. So you have to put a lot more effort in that than remember where your foot goes. So that game and probably Boom, I would probably avoid with
Oh
puppies because
yeah.
we just get so fixated on I need to throw here, and nobody's willing to be like, no, but I don't really need to throw here because I don't really care about points right now, you know?
Reedy's an interesting one too, because like that would be like a level up from four-way play, kind of,
Yeah,
right? You're moving around the field, but you have more risk to trip over your dog, and you could throw just the sweet spot if you wanted to keep them short.
right.
But that might be another one that like maybe not initially, but like after they get the four-way play pattern, you can add in something like Reedy where you're moving more aggressively around the field,
Yep.
and you
Yeah,
can like
I wouldn't say no to greedy, right? So if I was like, oh, the only, these games are so if there was a local up dog and there was spaced out, greedy, boom, and time warp available and I had a
yeah,
puppy, I would play greedy. I might play time warp, but I would not play boom and spaced out with my puppies.
yeah. Yeah, time warp would be a great one too. Just throw this
Hmm.
short one and call them back for their recalls and work on if you could do a drop at a second one would be awesome from the
Exactly.
return games that you play. Yeah, that'd be a really good one.
Yep.
And just listening to that too, like I just go back to what you said earlier and not worrying about what my score is and realizing that even though the game is telling me I have to hit that other, zone over there that's really far, that's going to be probably a failure, like you said, just focus on success and focus on keeping your dog engaged. And I love what you said earlier too. I don't even have to play the whole round. I could end early, and
Mhm.
I rarely see anybody do that, but that's a great suggestion as well. Like keep that engagement going and on a high, and walk off with 5 or 10 points.
Yep. Yep. And that goes along with the thing of like, don't play your dog with the intention of being competitive. If they're my general rule of thumb is under 2 years old. Like I can go out there and play, but I'm not going to try to be competitive with a young dog just because it adds so much more stress from you. You're going to play differently. You're going to push your dog more than you intend to. You're going to miss all those subtle signs that we talked about earlier. And so for me, dogs under 2, we're not playing competitively.
I need to remember that as I'm a judge and announcing things. Sometimes I get caught up in, oh my gosh, their personal best or whatever it is, but I also need to really like give kudos to teams that are doing, like you say, like keeping their dogs engaged and maybe not going for that long zone because I know it's not likely to be a successful attempt for their dog. So
Right. Right.
people that are judging these things, if you see a young dog, if you see a young team out there doing what Sarah's saying and really keeping their dog engaged and focusing on the skills rather than the points, like as judges, we can
Oh,
encourage
they're
that
awesome.
as well. What's that,
Yeah.
Dre?
Tell them they're doing awesome.
Yep.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is like so many times, like I know I do it, I for sure do it sometimes, but there's also other times that I get caught up in, wow, this young dog's doing so good. Their old personal best was 7 points and they got 9 today. Woo, or
Mhm.
whatever. And like, and all that's doing, of course, is fostering that competitive nature.
And it is good, though, to point out those achievements, especially if you have a young dog, because that's a good way for us to keep tabs on, is our game actually improving? Is that hard work paying off? So I think it is a fine balance.
Right.
One thing I think that could help. So if you're a new team or a young dog team or whatever, and you know you're going out there to set your dog up for success, let the judge know ahead of time. That way they're not saying, hey, you need this zone over here, this zone over here, this zone over here, this, over and over again, pushing you. Be like, hey, I'm going to skip that zone over there. You don't even need to watch it. I'm going for these ones, helping my dog be successful.
Yep. Be like, be quiet, Jack. I'm not going for that zone. I am not completing the spaced out.
Yeah, just
Deal
sticking with
it.
the stupid blue triangle, guys.
That brings me to another question. So let's say we have a new dog sport person. Someone hears about Updog. They don't have a dog. They go and get a taco baby or an amazing coolie or something exciting, and they have everything set up. What should they look for? Like if somebody's going out to get a sport dog, what's something that they should look for in a disc dog? Like some basic skills. So if they're evaluating whether a dog will be good for this sport or any of those things, what are some of the things that they're going to be looking for in that dog?
They need to talk to the breeder, because anything they see on that day they're out there evaluating that dog is just a tiny little snapshot of that puppy's life, and they change so fast. So I'll have a dog in a litter that is consistently a great tugger, consistently mouth on everything, consistently chasing whatever I throw, puppy like rolling a little tiny ball, whatever it might be. And then the day the puppy owner comes pick up, they're not doing that for some reason. And that's normal puppy development. So it's very difficult to go see a litter and evaluate who's going to be a star and who's not that day, especially around the pickup ages between 8 and 12 weeks. Fear periods are rampant during those ages. So a dog that might be a little bit more shy on the day you go see could be an awesome, confident dog the next week. So you don't know those things. And so speak to the breeder, see what the trends are, see who they recommend, be very honest about your strengths and weaknesses, because your breeder's job is to match you with the best dog. So I always ask people, are you better at calming a dog down or getting a dog excited? Because that's going to tell me, I'm not going to place a dog that that needs help calming down with somebody who's not good at that skill, right? And so my job is to help pair my dog's strengths, my puppy's strengths, with the puppy owner's weaknesses and vice versa. And so you can't do that when you go and evaluate a litter. You can't do that when you meet a puppy for the first time. If I'm looking for a sure thing and I don't want to gamble and I just have it's a rescue rehome situation and I only have that little moment, I want to see that they're engaging with me. I want to see that they come right up to me. I want to see that when I move around whatever little object I have, that they're chasing at it and they're pouncing at it and they're trying to interact with it and they're excited about it. I'm not so keen on, I don't need to see a natural retrieve or anything like that. A lot of that could be trained. But if you're weaker on training those things, then maybe look for the puppy that has a natural retrieve so that you don't have to do that battle later on. And so that what that means is if I roll a little ball, do they pick it up and bring it back to me versus picking up and going and laying down somewhere else with it? Exactly. Yep. And so kind of know your strengths and weaknesses as far as that goes. Be as honest with yourself as possible, as honest with the person who has the dog and has seen the dog every single day, and let them know what you're kind of looking for. But yeah, I don't want the puppy, that shies away. I've had those puppies. They're fine. You can build up a lot. I'm not saying they're not bad dogs or anything like that. But if I'm looking for a sure thing for disc or, performing or any of that stuff, then I need a puppy that's overly confident.
Yeah, that really, really good point hidden in there was you talking about what the owner or handler wants to do. Because I think that you and I are almost completely opposite in regards to the types of dogs you like. You really like thinking dogs, and I really like doing dogs. And so the dogs that you think are great for the stuff that you want to train, I would hate it. Like I would hate training the stuff that you like training. And
So I would argue that I like doing dogs and I like making them thoughtful. I do not like thoughtful dogs.
Well, you like coolies.
Yeah. Yeah,
They're
but
very
I like
thoughtful.
coolies that are pushy and will just do the thing. And then I like making them be thoughtful. So think creature, right?
Yeah.
So he is do,
Right,
don't
right.
think. But I enjoy creating a thoughtful dog out of that mess. That's my favorite thing in the
Yeah.
world. Yep.
So for you, a dog that doesn't, that doesn't have that thinking ability, you're really good at creating that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's not my favorite thing to work on.
Right.
So
Yep.
that's where I think I wanted to pluck that gem out of what you said, that like there are obviously we want dogs that are driven. Of course, we would love a dog that has a natural retrieve and great leaping ability and perfect size and nice length of loin and not too much angulation and balance everywhere and all of that stuff. But when we're looking, we also want to look at like what the stuff is we actually want to work on, because I think that the type
Exactly.
of dog that I'm going to be looking for is going to be different than Jack or somebody else
Right.
on the stuff
I
that
know that.
Right.
Right. I know I'm not a cheerleader. I don't want to have to encourage a
Yeah.
dog. I'm not good with that. I get frustrated with that. And so if I feel like I'm having to pull the dog a lot, it's not a dog for me. I like the dogs that I have to calm down and create thoughtfulness. Like those are my dogs because I want to just stand here. I don't want to have to
Yeah.
run around.
Yeah.
But
And
Mine
yeah,
has to
that's
be fluffy
really
and snuggly.
fucking snuggly. And I'm like,
he's
please
fine
don't
with
snuggle with me.
cheerleading as long as it's fluffy.
Yeah. But that's where it's like be honest with your skills and your abilities and what you enjoy training. Like, yeah, I can cheerlead, I can create a beast out of a dog if I want to, but I don't want to. So, but there are people that really enjoy that, and that's their personality. So,
Right.
Well, Dre, I think we're getting close to our
I
time
would
here, so I don't want to
time warpy.
yeah, I don't want to not have enough time for our time warp challenge here for Sarah.
Getting
Sarah,
ready.
do you know what the time warp challenge is on the Sweet Spot podcast?
no, I don't.
Oh,
I'm
all
really
right.
So
Well,
worried.
at the
Dre,
end of
why don't you give her a quick synopsis?
yeah, so at the end of each episode, we're going to ask 10 rapid fire questions. You have 60 seconds to try and get answers to all 10 questions. So the answers should be succinct so that you can get through all 10, but we definitely want to hear what your answers are. And they're all just fun, silly questions. So
Yeah,
nothing too
not really
stressful.
about dog training or anything like that. Just fun
Oh,
questions.
hold on, I need more coffee. Hold on one second.
And if there's any questions that you get stuck on, you can pass so that we can
Okay.
get to the other questions. But like, maybe we'll give you one pass, maybe two passes. No mucho passes.
Okay. All right, I'm ready.
All right. You're going to do the first one, Jack?
I'll do
And
the
I've
first
got
one. You
the timer.
start the timer.
That's my favorite part. All right. Ready, set, go.
What is your go-to karaoke song?
Oh God, I don't sing karaoke. You don't want to hear me sing. That would never, ever, ever happen. There is no
All right,
song.
All right.
pass. Go ahead,
Do
Dre.
you have any other pets besides dogs?
I do. I have a crow named Penguin and a cat named Fisher.
What is your favorite Thanksgiving food?
All of it. It is my favorite holiday of all time.
Oh, that's a good answer. What's the first concert you ever went to? 36 seconds.
Oh, Good Charlotte.
What is your favorite updog game?
Oh, Fragility. Freestyle.
Good answer. On a PB&J, what flavor should the jelly be?
Raspberry.
Ooh, good one. Black Friday shopping, online or full contact?
Online. I hate people.
What is your favorite disc to throw? 10 seconds.
Super Swirl.
If all your clothes had to be one color for the rest of your life, what would that color be?
Great.
Oh God, do you know how to yo-yo?
Yes, but I used to know tricks. I don't anymore.
And time. Very nice. The yo-yo one, it went off at yes. So we're going to count that as a 10 answer win. Congratulations for completing our time warp challenge. Woo-hoo!
All right, Sarah. So what tricks did you used to know? Did you know Around the World and Rock the Cradle and all that?
I think those were the two. Honestly,
the
I
two.
think that was it. I went through a phase.
In the 80s, 90s.
You had to know Walk the Dog too.
No, I don't think I ever got that one. I think I tried
No?
really hard and I don't think I ever got that one. My brother did though. So
Okay.
I don't remember the last time I played with a yo-yo. Honestly, it's been many, many years, but I don't think I got any of those tricks really well. What's the one where it
That's the Rock the Cradle.
Yeah, the triangle one.
that
Yeah.
one? I think I could do that one.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool. All right. Well, that was a great time word challenge. Great work, Sarah. Thank you for being our guest today and sharing your expertise and immense knowledge on puppies coming into the sport. You're one of the best at bringing in happy and driven and focused sport dogs. So thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today. And Jack, thanks as always for being my co-host on today's episode.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. I learned a ton and it helped me reflect on a lot of things. So I'm sure I'm going to actually listen to this podcast myself again and listen to your answers. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. And is there anything, Sarah, that you want to that you want to rep or anything? Like anything out there? If folks listen to this podcast and they're like, "Wow, I love this. I would love to hear more of what Sarah has to say." Any place they should go?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. I teach classes on Fenzi Dog Sport Academy. I have a stunt dog tricks class coming up that opens for registration today. It runs for the December session. And so stunt dog tricks, rebound, stalls, dog catches, so the foundation frisbee tricks. And I usually run my disc dog handlers course in the springtime. So watch for that. But those are my two frisbee dog related things that are coming up.
All right. And just so you guys know, we are recording this on November 22nd. So as
Oh,
Sarah says, it opens today. We'll be
Yep.
posting this probably Tuesday of the following week. So you guys, I don't know if will that work out timing wise still, Sarah?
yep. So registration's open for until December 14th, I believe. There might
All
not
right.
be any working spots left, but there'll probably be plenty of auditing spots left.
Well, there you guys go.
All
All
right.
right.
Thank you, Sarah, again for being with us here today. We are very grateful for you and for the Updog podcast and for you, Jack. And we also want to let you guys know if you have any ideas for podcast topics that you'd like to see. Jack's going to be posting to the group to ask you guys what you'd like to see for topics so that we can get on those, or anybody interested in being on our podcast, you can let us know that as well and what you'd like to talk about. We're always looking for new ideas and we want to know what our updoggers want to learn. So we're here for you.
In the meantime, guys, keep working with your dogs. We hope to see you out on an updog field soon.
And be kind to each other.
And be kind to your animals. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.